The late 2000s is considered to be the golden era of Guitar Hero. Everyone you knew was heading down to their local GameStop or Walmart to pick up a Guitar Hero 1, 2, or 3 bundle depending on when they found out about the franchise. So many titles were released during this era, and with this spawned some of the most prolific players to date. It was a decade that really set the tone for what Guitar Hero and Clone Hero are capable of today. Custom songs were a rarity, which means competition was fierce among some of the hardest songs you can find on the original copy of the games. This episode of Score Progression is going to be a tad different than the other iterations of the series. Instead of one song in particular, we're going to take a look at an entire game. So let's take a look at the score progression of the Guitar Hero 1 Expert Difficulty setlist. Before we start talking about the scores that occurred in this game, we should go over on how exactly the first ever Guitar Hero game came to be. If you wish to skip this part and get right to the score progression, I'll throw in a timestamp somewhere right now. The first bits of information that would be released about Guitar Hero was when it was first introduced to the world at E3 2005. According to GameSpot writer Ryan Davis, Guitar Hero was tucked away in a little meeting room buried in Kentia Hall, in which new players were introduced to a demo of the game that included what was supposedly an unfinished controller in-game. The demo included 6 tracks, which were More Than a Feeling, Spanish Castle Magic, Symphony of Destruction, Sharp Dressed Man, Higher Ground, and Set It Off. It was thought to be quite an upgrade from the original guitar rhythm game predecessor, Guitar Freaks, which was released in 1999, where the controller had 3 buttons and 1 strum bar, which severely limited the versatility and accuracy of charts that could be made for the game. Guitar Hero, on the other hand, was said to have 5 buttons and 1 strum bar instead, which allowed rock and roll's most classic charts to be charted more accurately to the music and provides a better challenge to those who want to push their skill more in the game. Interestingly enough, a website by the name of beaguitarhero.com had a present domain on May 8, 2005, well before E3 even took place. The page simply reiterated the website's name, and it wouldn't be a few weeks until the site went live and Red Octane announced a contest for any band to enter a song of theirs to be in the official Guitar Hero game, alongside bands like Red Hot Chili Peppers, Sum 41, White Zombie, and even Jimi Hendrix. Except they weren't the actual songs. They were, covers. Very clever wording, Red Octane. Eventually, we would finally get to see footage of Guitar Hero, and this would be released onto IGN's site on September 21st, 2005. The trailer is pretty standard, although it has some weird instances where there's no note highway in the gameplay, and just the rock meter and multiplier are present. There could just be some unused assets for some of the charts, which explain the lack of a note highway, but that's just a guess if anything. On October 7th, 2005, Red Octane had created a website forum for people to discuss the upcoming Guitar Hero game, titled forum.guitarherogame.com. This site was simply just used for discussion about the Guitar Hero franchise, and even had a section of the website entirely dedicated to asking the developers of the game about any questions fans had. The first footage we would see of other people playing the game would be uploaded by IGN as well on October 19th, 2005, playing the chart Iron Man on Expert Difficulty. This video would also showcase the game mode Face Off, in which players went head-to-head playing bits of the song in a back-and-forth fashion. A couple teasers a few weeks later would give hungry consumers a first glimpse of a couple of charts, which were Crossroads and You Got Another Thing Coming on Expert. With players getting more and more used to the game throughout the months after its release, a website for posting Guitar Hero scores, and also served as a general rhythm gaming forum, would begin to make waves, as scorehero.com would make its debut on January 28, 2006. Multiple boards would be created onto the site, including one specifically for Guitar Hero related accomplishments, and a leaderboard system on top of that to keep track of how well players stacked up against each other. Multiple threads in its first few months of activity show players getting used to the game, whether they were clearing or 5-starring a certain song for the first time, beating the career mode, or if you were really ahead of the curve, you were full comboing or FCing some of the expert charts the game had to offer. On February 21st, 2006, user Draken created a thread titled Full Combo 100% thread, in which players got to post specifically their full combo accomplishments or 100%s. A 100% signifying that they did hit all the notes, but they may have overstrummed somewhere, which doesn't grant them the full combo. Most of these scores would be expressed through text on forum posts, but you would come across the occasional screenshot if they uploaded the screenshots to another site, as the ones uploaded to Scorehero's database are now defunct. Since we're taking a look at an entire set list, we won't be going through every single first ever FC, as a bit over half of them are fairly trivial in difficulty compared to the harder charts in the game. and it would be extremely difficult to pinpoint who the first person was to FC the easier charts anyways. Now that you're all caught up, let's take a closer look back a decade and a half ago to show how players really handled the Guitar Hero 1 expert setlist. Since we're going to be talking about the Guitar Hero 1 setlist in particular, there are a couple of things that should be taken into consideration before we start taking a look at some scores. First, there's one crucial detail to understand about this game specifically that no other game in the franchise had to deal with, and that's the hammer-on and pull-off engine. Hammer-ons are used to hit faster sections of songs and don't require any strumming. You'll see some of the notes have a completely white circle in the middle as opposed to the black outline in the notes you have to strum beforehand. The problem with these in this game specifically is that you have to have the other notes held down previously in order to perform these hammer-ons. Otherwise, it simply won't work. Pull-offs are normally done by having the previous notes already held down, hitting the latest note in that sequence, and then pulling off of those earlier notes. Hitting a pattern like a trill, for example, utilizes this method in its most simplistic form. Both of these are also referred to as ho-pos for short. The strumming engine in this game was already tight enough, and is the most strict out of the entire Guitar Hero franchise, but the hammer-on and pull-off window was even tighter and considered outright trivial to some players. Grace notes and trills were the more viable ways these methods could be used, but it was just more consistent to strum virtually every note if you wanted to FC something. That, or players just use a DualShock controller if they wanted to emulate the feeling of hitting hammer-ons. Also, videos weren't that common of a method back then for documenting scores for the game, so a good majority of these scores were done through forum posts, pictures, or streaming, in which the last one is now completely nullified due to all of Ustream's previous broadcasts and highlights no longer existing. In essence, expect a whole lot of pictures and a lot of lore to go with it. To kick off the first notably hard FC to obtain in this game, this player actually managed to tackle a few FCs quickly, and he went by the name of Crimson Monkeys. He FC'd Godzilla, Spanish Castle Magic, and Crossroads all within 1 week in late July and early August 2006. Godzilla had a tricky solo in the middle, along with various mini sections that are very easy to mess up on. Spanish Castle Magic had 2 hard solos with a very chokeable strumming section in the last 10 seconds. And lastly, Crossroads also had 2 difficult solos, but the second one being extremely long and very in your face the whole time. With those 3 FCs, the game was already up to 36 out of the 49 expert songs FC'd. These would be the last first ever FCs we would see from Crimson Monkeys, as while he was ahead of the curve during this time period, someone else began approaching his skill level. His name was ES942. ES942 would obtain the first ever FC on Fly on the Wall on September 9th, 2006. This chart's difficulty was really just in the last 15 seconds alone. Grinding this chart was a pain in particular, due to the hardest part of the chart being the last 5 seconds with the fast trills and super fast strumming. ES942 would post in the FC thread for the first time, stating that he had now FC'd all of this on October 26, 2006. All of this has a very abrasive first solo with its fast chords that shortly follow up with a fast sweeping section as well. The second solo isn't anywhere near as difficult, but like Fly on the Wall, the last few seconds were very easy to mess up on and should not go unnoticed to anyone trying to FC it. The list of new FCs would come to a halt for a little while, but another one would be finally taken off the list by a new user on January 27, 2007, an FC on Cheat of the Church by Mr. Quiet 3. This chart is just very hectic all around, lots of soloing the whole time, and a very good test of consistency overall. This FC alone may have sparked ES942 to come back to GH1 and bring the total amount of FCs left to the single digits, because he would go on to FC Symphony of Destruction the very next day on January 28, 2007. This chart has a deceivingly hard solo that would have players constantly restarting, especially with the 24th or 1/6 notes at the end. Top players would eventually start creating their own threads for their accomplishments, especially as the list for FCs grew shorter and shorter. Frankenstein would be next on the list for ES942, as he took this one down on February 14, 2007. The first solo is pretty hard to time, specifically the descending quads. Then some fast trills come into the mix with a double yellow strum that can be pretty hard to transition in and out of. ES942's reign would finally stop at this chart, and with 8 more to go, it was now other people's turns to take the spotlight and show what they had to bring to the table. On February 19, 2007, player Empty Set obtained the first ever FC on You Got Another Thing Comin'. Another chart with an extremely awkward at times solo, especially near the end, and one of the most chokeable strumming sections in the entire game. To add more fuel to the fire, this chart is about 5 minutes long, so you can only begin to imagine how many runs have been lost in the last 10 seconds alone. Empty Set had been going for an FC on this under the radar since October 2006, so that alone should show how grueling FC runs on this can get. Also, for some interesting reason, this song was placed in Tier 2 in the career set list, and was the last song in the career set list to be FC'd outside of the last tier, Face Melters, the last tier in the game. The song is also mistitled in the game as You Got Another Thing Comin', where the title for the original song by Judas Priest is You've Got Another Thing Coming. Speaking of Face Melters, another different player managed to take his first one off the list too, as Popemobile, who was ranked number 1 on the GH1 overall leaderboards a couple months ago around this time, will get a Face Melter FC of his own by FCing Cowboys from Hell on March 3rd, 2007. This chart is just outright daunting overall, as there's almost never a dull moment. Zigzag patterns, or zigs, plague the entire chart whether it's in the verses or the solo. The solo itself is extremely broken up into these various 24th note sections where you have to have amazing alt strumming control, and the red, yellow, blue zig pattern is a nightmare to just hit once, let alone in the middle of a solo. FCs in this game would begin to slow down a good bit, but Popemobile was still out for more as he had an amazing session on May 13th, 2007, and in this thread included an FC that was quite ahead of its time, as it remained to be the only FC for the entirety of 2007. This song was Texas Flood. The first thing you'll notice about this chart upon your first playthrough is that it is pretty slow in the beginning, but do not let that fool you. This song has technical blues guitar shredding written all over it, and if you are a rhythm-based player, you will definitely struggle with this. There are an abundance of sections where you are just soloing all over the place, and it only gets harder throughout this 5.5 minute journey. There's nothing too fast compared to what we've seen before, but overstrumming and timing are going to be your worst nightmares if you plan on FCing this soothing but strenuous chart. This FC almost made it seem like nothing else was doable after this, because it wouldn't even be until January of 2008 we would see any new FCs on Texas Flood, let alone anything else. Along with that, we have yet to see a single video of any of these first ever FCs. So would we? And if so, when? And on what charts? Let's go a little more in depth now and slow down the pace as we close in on the set list and take a look at some of the most competitive Guitar Hero in the 2000s. Because we're approaching what I like to call the Final 5. Now I know it may have felt like we just breezed through a good majority of the set list already, but now is the time where things in the Guitar Hero community really begin to become a lot more intense. So let's get down to the details of what happened behind the last 5 charts remaining. After Popemobile FC Texas Flood, there were 5 songs that remained to be FC'd. These would be Bark at the Moon, Fire It Up, Decontrol, and Get Ready to Rock. Decontrol, a bonus song in the game, was looking to be the next song on the list to be FC'd. And if you were to think Popemobile would be the one to go after it, you would be close, as he did manage to 99 it in the same month he FC'd Texas Flood. Instead, yet another new player chimed in and gave it 2 attempts of his own. His name? Kev227, Popemobile's brother. He became the first to break 300k on Decontrol on August 19th, 2007, with a -1 according to someone in the thread. Decontrol only has one 8-second section that stands out from the rest of the chart. Sounds easy at first, but let's break down how difficult this section really is. This build-up section right here is so awkwardly hard to time, and it builds up so fast and abruptly to 14 notes per second strumming that alternates between notes, slows right back down, and then you have to hit the quad zigs at the end, all in just 8 seconds. Kev would increase his Decontrol score to 302k, and according to some posts on his accomplishments thread, he FC'd Cowboys from Hell 5 times. So it was definitely looking like he was starting to feel himself with this engine, and that some new FCs may be underway soon if he can make Cowboys from Hell out of all charts look this easy. He would take a break from Guitar Hero 1 for a while to dabble in the other games in the series. At around late December 2007, he came back to the song and managed to reverse choke an FC on it, meaning he messed up in an earlier section of the song and nabbed the entire solo. In January of 2008, Kev was back to doing runs on Decontrol again, and even other charts too like Texas Flood. After chokes of many kinds on Decontrol and even one on Texas Flood, he he would finally FC D-Control on January 17th, 2008. And this would be the first ever video we would see of an un-FC'd song in Guitar Hero 1 being taken off the list. With this FC, the list now remains with just 4 songs left. In November of 2007, player Low7 was beginning to make a proper debut into Guitar Hero 1. Given he was rank 1 on the overall leaderboards for Guitar Hero 2 and Rock the 80s simultaneously, it was no surprise he began to blast through the Guitar Hero 1 setlist since he seemed to have mastered Guitar Hero 2's engine. One of the main reasons he decided to start going for GH1 FCs in the first place is because he didn't have access to Guitar Hero 3 yet, so it seemed reasonable for him to give this game a proper run through. Given one of his goals were to FC Fly on the Wall as his best accomplishment, it seemed like he was going to need some time to get used to this engine. But out of nowhere, he posts a near FC on Get Ready to Rock, one of the last bonus tracks in the game to be FC'd, claiming he missed in one section of the solo and FC'd everything else. This chart is probably one of the most chokeable, if not the most chokeable song in the entire game to some. Not even 20 seconds in, you have a quint zig to hit, which is followed by a super fast descending orange blue yellow triplet not long after. By now you haven't even reached the solo yet, and have probably restarted dozens of times just to get to that solo. The solo starts right out of the gate, with some red yellow blue zigs that transition into some ascending sweeps. These 16th or 1/4 notes follow up with some 12th or 1/3 note triplets, then right back to more 16th note sweeps. Unless you know this solo by heart, you're bound to overstrum, as it's very hard to switch between 12th and 16th notes at this speed. There's one more section after the solo that can really throw the run away, and that's the quad zig and the chords right before the end in the last chorus. Low7's improvements on the song would come to a halt after his near FC, but there were 2 players that were looking to take it down a couple months later, Kev227 and StrikeBowler585. Shortly after Kev FC D-Control, he was immediately looking after Get Ready to Rock, and secured a -2 in first place on January 20th, 2008. That same exact day, StrikeBowler took first place with a new score of 299k. While we don't know the miscount, it's safe to assume that it's fairly close to Kev's and that he was also in range of an FC. The craziest thing about StrikeBowler's run is that he has never FC'd a single song in GH1 yet. He has quite a few respectable FCs in the other games, but it's an insane thought to entertain that this could be his first ever FC in the game. Just another fascinating example of another Guitar Hero 2 player coming to Guitar Hero 1 and potentially setting some of the best FCs in this entire game. A few hours later, Kev would make it past the solo with an FC for the first time and would miss near the end sadly. Like we talked about before, it's highly likely he may have missed in the quad zig right before the ending chords, or the chords themselves since they're also fairly tricky. An hour later, he gets a 100% overstrum. 10 minutes later, another overstrum 100%. 20 minutes later, he FCs past the solo and chokes in most likely the same spot as his last choke. StrikeBowler decided to stream his attempts on it not long after, and he also managed to get 100% with some overstrums. Some runs later, he FC'd the solo for the first time, but he choked in the ending chords. How do we know this for certain? Luckily, we actually have a picture of the score and the note streak, which means we can pinpoint the exact spot he messed up, assuming his note streak ended on his first miss, which would be this red-blue chord in the last chorus. This would be confirmed by StrikeBowler by him describing his distaste for the chords at the end as well. A video of one of his overstrum 100% still exists on YouTube and was uploaded by user Arnold Blues. While the video quality is unrecognizable in some areas, it's still possible to make out that he missed in the 12th note triplets, and you can faintly make out a 100% in the bottom right corner of the results screen as well.
That was really bad. Overstrong. was probably 100%. I was that close. And I missed the star power. Oh my god, another 100%. I missed at the very end of the hard part.
Something to note is that Strikebowler's stream was getting over 100 viewers, which may not sound like much at first, but the only way people knew when someone was going live back then was to announce in your accomplishments thread that you were going live and hope people would see. So breaking triple-digit viewers was astounding for the Guitar Hero scene at the time, and just streaming in general. With the competition between Kev and Strikebowler being as close as could possibly be, someone within the next few days had to get it at this point. Strikebowler went live again, and on January 22nd, 2008, he became the first ever person to FC Get Ready to Rock. With this now FC'd, we're down to 3. Right around this date, 2 top players decided to create a rivalry thread in which they raced to see who could obtain 200 FCs throughout the various Guitar Hero games. These players were Smokey Prog and F4 Phantom 2500. F4 Phantom listed out his plan. He calculated all the songs he knew he couldn't FC and the ones he could FC, and this gave him a nice total of exactly 200. The ones he omitted in GH1 were Texas Flood, Bark at the Moon, Fired Up, Decontrol, and Get Ready to Rock. F4 Phantom wasn't particularly focused on GH1 at the time though, as he was focusing on some of the harder FCs GH2 had to offer instead. On February 13th, 2008, a random bump in the thread showed that he had gotten a 100% on Fired Up. With this chart, there's a quick bit before the solo begins that's a very strong sign of what to expect later in Solo 2, because Solo 2 is extremely technical and much faster than this section. It starts out with some broken up double blue notes that transition into the fast red blue orange triplets that then go into a blue orange trill with more double blue strums, so you're spending the majority of this section on the later frets. Like the beginning of the solo, you have to quickly pause and then strum the next double blue to finish off the last few notes in the solo. If this isn't overstrum bait, then I'm really not quite sure what is. Solo 3 is much more tame than Solo 2, and there's not a whole lot to look at, but after FCing Solo 2, it's going to feel much harder due to how nervous you'll most likely be after nabbing Solo 2 after dozens of attempts of even making it to that solo. When F4 Phantom showed that he got 100% on Fired Up, the thread was just outright shocked given that no one knew he was even going for the FC to begin with. He stated that he had actually played this as his first song of the day just to practice Solo 2 and managed to get it first try. The only way of practicing solos back then was through playing the game itself, as there was no practice mode until Guitar Hero 2. He stated that he wasn't even paying attention that he was FCing until near the end of Solo 3, where he overstrummed at the last possible note he could. He shook it off and said he would work on it, and hopefully the community would finally see this chart FC'd. Well, he didn't need to work too much for it, because 4 hours later, he secured one of the last FCs in this game, with the first ever FC on Fired Up. Another very unexpected FC, as F4 Phantom had no more than 20 FCs in this game, so it was impressive to see yet another player adapt to an engine so quickly from Guitar Hero 2 and get one of the best FCs ever. The site he used to upload screenshots no longer has any of his other screenshots, so we don't have a picture of the score. But we do have scorehero reactions from the stream, and it's listed in his previous scores, which did show that it did exist at the time. Down the line, he re-FC'd it to get the first ever video FC. So even with no concrete proof at the moment existing of the original FC, this re-FC should definitely say something. Just 2 songs now remain on the list. At this point, you're probably wondering why I've been miscounting the amount of FCs left and how I overlooked such a simple thing for the entirety of this video. Well, that's because I wasn't miscounting, as I intentionally left this one out until now. What if I told you that there was a song that was rejected from the final cut of the game last minute, but remained in the game's files and that the only way it could be accessed was through a GameShark code. Let's take another trip back to the original Guitar Hero forums on April 7th, 2006. A user by the name of EddieVH was asking about a hidden song in the game called Triplette, and if anyone had been able to play it. If we look at the date of this post, there's a video with the exact same date that had been posted on the chart, which is most likely what sparked this post to begin with. A week later, user PH Nord explained how to obtain the song and revealed who he was. Quote, "Hello everyone, my name is PH Nord, but you all may know me as Andrew Bush. Triplette is my song, originally titled Advanced Harmony. I worked as a tester for Harmonix. I actually authored the note placements and everything for my song, but at the last minute, it was decided it should be pulled due to the fact that it is stylistically divergent from all the other songs in the game. I also hacked the code to access it. To clarify, the original code is in RAW. I have converted the code so it works on all cheat device formats. For all the conversions, go to triplette.iscool.net. If we go to the site, it's pretty straightforward and has all the codes for every version of GameShark and Action Replay. There's another song that didn't make it into the final game and is also accessible via cheat codes, but that's for another day, and it was also FC'd very quickly. Andrew makes a pretty bold claim that Triplette has the hardest solo in the game. Given what we've seen already, that's quite the claim to make. I'll play the solo in its entirety right now, and we'll run through it again to pick out the notably more difficult sections in it. This song has the longest amount of soloing in a single solo out of any chart, running at about 25 seconds straight in length. But there's other things we need to address before we can even start with that. The chords near the beginning are fast and have very intricate fretting. The first solo is as awkward as humanly possible with its varying speeds, and then you have to hit those same chords again. If you've made it to the second solo with an FC, best of luck on this one. Descending triplets all across the board with some tricky shred transitioning in between, some quad zigs, trilling, a brief slowdown to throw off your momentum, and just a little bit more sweeping to finally get yourself to the end. Thankfully, this song is very short in about 2 minutes and 20 seconds, which makes grinding the song itself in terms of time management a bit easier, but it's so compact and crudely difficult that you virtually saw no one attempting to FC this. A few people on the scorehero leaderboards in 2007 show some pretty solid scores as far as past attempts go, but the closest documented score was a 98% by Game Zelda on August 19, 2007. Other than that, no one else was going for this. Partially due to it only being accessible through purchasing cheating software, but also unless you're a top player, there wasn't a reason to get this song, so very few scores even today exist on this. Super Blue Man 3 bumped Strikeblower's accomplishment thread that he got the first 99% on it. The thread goes dead again, and out of nowhere with really no progression behind it, Strikeblower gets the first FC a week later on March 7th, 2008. Thanks to Kev227, we have the last minute on video. Again, it's almost impossible to make anything out, so I will have the chart in the lower right corner for clarity, and will provide a screenshot of the score after.
Sorry, I'm just getting in right here. My internet just crashed, kind of, so I kind of had to reload. And this is a full combo going right now, so you might get it. No way.
Oh my god.
Holy shit. Please don't freeze up. Internet sucks.
Oh my god,
Yes.
I did it. Yes.
There you go.
Oh my god.
So after years of intense competition and FC grinds, one more song remains to be FC'd, And what a better song for it to be than the last song in the career set list, Bark at the Moon. There's just something so inherently intimidating about playing the last song in the career set list for some reason. Its intentions are traditionally to serve as the hardest song in the game, and by God the developers really nailed it here. Whoever even bothered to get so close to FCing this beast of a chart would have the whole community right behind them, so the pressure was certainly on at this point. Before we get into that, let's talk about the last chart that remains to be FC'd. The first 2 minutes are mostly trivial, some standard broken up strumming throughout the verses and choruses, and that's about it. The solo itself starts out innocent too, as it's comparable in difficulty to some of the first FCs we went over. The solo begins to build up with these fairly easy to learn and catchy patterns a couple of times, then the third time, it transitions into this. These are the fastest sweeps in the entire game, and are very centralized on the later frets, which make fretting this a nightmare on top of strumming all of it perfectly. Hitting this solo once alone is considered to be a very impressive accomplishment in this game, even by today's standards. You're not done yet though. The 25-second outro with the abundance of broken up strumming all around the frets is possibly the most nerve-wracking thing you can experience in this game. So who took the initiative to take this chart on? A player by the name of We Already Know, also known as WAK, posted a -10 on Bark at the Moon on April 17th, 2007. He showed a bit of confidence in this post too, stating that he was capable of getting an FC in the future. By August 12th, 2007, he had gotten first place on the song with a 99% and 420k points. After taking a break from GH1 in general, he announced he was streaming in his accomplishments thread that he was going live with some more attempts on January 24th, 2008. This stream was phenomenal to say the least. He FC'd the solo in a run and managed to get a -2 with a new record of 422k. The closest thing we have to proof of this is a screenshot of a potential video that was once available on the streaming service Stickum, and of course some thread responses from the initial time it was performed. Strikebowler caught wind of this and initiated a friendly rivalry between the two, stating that he was also close to the FC and beat WAK's score by 16 points. With no new scores from WAK anytime soon, the next reasonable person for players to keep their eyes peeled out for was now Strikebowler. Strikebowler was off to an amazing start, as he already took down WAK's #1 score in late January 2008. By next month, he had gotten past the solo in a full run for the first time ever on February 22nd, 2008. According to Strikebowler himself, he had messed up in the notes after the solo. Not during the solo or in the outro. It was the orange sustained notes at the end due to sheer nerves. He also said he had plenty of -2 and -1 runs, so his consistency was outstanding. It was confirmed to be FCable at this point, so now the actual FC just needed to happen. February 26, 2008, he FC'd D-Control and stated that he got 5 -1 runs on Bark at the Moon in one single session. Bad star power, second half of the solo, other mistakes, you name it, Strikebowler had probably went through it plenty of times by now. The pressure really started to grow on when WOK posted how he had no motivation to go for it anymore. And given Strikebowler was the next closest person to get it, it was officially his turn to just go for it all. The Triplette FC he got in March that we discussed earlier had virtually the entire Scorehero community focused on this one player. A player who started out in Guitar Hero 2, but gave the first iteration a whirl, and now he's made it to the point where he's on the brink of making history. March comes around and he focuses on setting some other records in the other games. April 22nd, 2008, he is now FC'd Fire It Up. Strikebowler's momentum was just not stopping. The FC was inevitable. Every new FC he got would flood his thread and people were checking hourly to see if he'd done anything. What if someone else came and stole the spotlight though? And if so, which player would it be? Would Kev come out of the woodwork again and show his prowess? Would WOK come back with attempts after taking a break? Would someone else just come out of nowhere and take the FC as well? Or would Strikebowler finally settle this once and for all and give the community what they've been waiting for? On April 23rd, 2008, 11:32 p.m., Bark at the Moon was 100% confirmed to be FC'd. The spectators who were watching his streams every night he was live had exploded in the thread with celebration and satisfaction that what was thought to be barely viable was now finally FC'd. Strikebowler went on to FC the rest of the game over the next couple of weeks, and the hardest song he had left was You Got Another Thing Comin'. So this was no trouble for him as he finished the setlist off on May 13th, 2008, FCing Smoke on the Water as his last song. The first person to FC the last song in the game now was the very first person to have FC'd the entire game single-handedly. As for video proof, I had looked everywhere for any possible evidence of even a shred of him playing the song, but sadly, nothing turned up. I actually managed to reach out to him on Facebook, and he surprisingly got back to me after being told by community members that he hadn't been involved with the community in years now. He told me that he live streamed everything and rarely recorded, so as far as footage from himself goes, nothing seems to exist, and his YouTube channel has been deleted for quite some time now anyways. I wasn't able to get in contact with him again after this, but we should be grateful that we still have the very screenshot that sparked one of the most iconic moments in Guitar Hero history, and the thread that it happened on will thrive on as if it just happened yesterday. While Guitar Hero 1 has almost no existing documentation in video form, and even some in picture form, the storyline when brought together was one of the most exciting to follow during the scorehero era. New players were popping up back and forth, new FCs coming out of thin air, and some of the most intense competition to maintain the hype that Guitar Hero brought when it first hit the store shelves. It's stories like this that shape what Guitar Hero means to some people. And during an era where technology was vastly different, it was amazing to see so many people come together with no social media. Just one thread bump and you had 80 plus people cheering you on to write the next chapter in the Guitar Hero history books. While I don't spoil videos traditionally, the next episode regarding this franchise should be pretty obvious by now. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I look forward to seeing you all there. This has been the score progression of the Guitar Hero 1 Expert Setlist. Thanks for watching. I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons for supporting the channel, and if you'd like to support the channel for more rhythm gaming content like this, feel free to check out my Patreon, along with my other links below. I will see you all in whatever video I upload next, and take care.